Well, Dabo Swinney kicking off his 14th full season at Clemson. Last year, the Tigers finished 10-3, which seems like a disappointment to the program. Clemson didn't win the ACC title, they didn't go to the college football playoff, but they did come up with a double-digit win season for the 11th straight year. Still not good enough for that successful Tigers program. So Dabo and DJ Uiagalelei, they're ready to kick off this 2022 season and show that last year was just a little flip in the radar. Looking at CBS Sports college football's top 25, we're looking at the top 10 here, and you see Clemson right there at number 5. Alabama, Ohio State, and Georgia just really thought to be the top 3 programs in the country, but Clemson doing their part to stay within that top 5. All right, let's welcome in our Chip Patterson. We're going to break down this Clemson team. So CBS has Clemson at number 5. The question here, was that 2021 the end of an era, or do you think it was just a little speed bump in their dynasty?
I think it was the end of an era. And I'm going to take my cue from Dabo Swinney himself, who said at the beginning of offseason conditioning, the torch has been passed. We look at the exit of Tony Elliott. We look at the exit of Brent Venables, a totally reshuffled staff. And I think that we have to look at the 6 straight ACC championships, the 6 straight playoff appearances, 4 times making the national title game, and twice winning the national championship, both against Alabama. I think that we have to think that that is an era. That is an era that was transformational. That is an era that forever changed what Clemson expects out of its football program and what Clemson believes it can accomplish. It only had that one national championship prior to Dabo Swinney. Now it's got 2 more on the plate. And I just think that we have to look at that as what has redefined Clemson football in the modern era. So that leads us to an even more interesting era, which is Clemson trying to reclaim past glory. We've seen other programs, even in the ACC, be able to go back and get it again. I think of Florida State, the Atlantic Division rival, which was able to win the national championship in 2013 after Bobby Bowden's success. Obviously, we've got the same head coach here with Dabo Swinney, but with the reshuffled staff, with a lot of exit on the roster as well, this is a new era for Clemson football, and the 2022 team is year 1 of this Clemson football 2.0.
And you talk about that reshuffled staff, a lot of changes. Longtime DC Brent Venables left for that head coaching job at Oklahoma. So that gives Wes Goodwin some really big shoes to fill over there. So how do you think he stacks up?
It's massive shoes to fill, and I think that there's probably going to be a little bit of a learning curve here. The good news is that Clemson has recruited and continues to recruit at such a high level that the tools that he has in terms of scheming up this defense, in terms of organizing the way they're going to go out and accomplish things, it's actually even better than the kind of talent that they had when Brent Venables first arrived and turned Clemson's defense from a liability, which it was back in 2011 when, I don't know, Tavon Austin and West Virginia put 70 on him in the Orange Bowl. That was what led Dabo Swinney to seek out Brent Venables. He had retooled this offense. He had a high-octane offense. He needed a defense that would match it. And so Brent Venables was the archetype of this. And here's the good news for Clemson. It's not just that the recruiting profile has been raised and the talent is higher than when Brent Venables came in, but Wes Goodwin has his own experience around this program, working under Brent Venables, working around the defense, so he can take the best of what he learned from Brent Venables, apply some of his own experience as well, take that higher talent group and be able to try to go accomplish the same thing that Venables did, because again, back to the expectations, after what we saw from the Clemson Tigers over the last 6-7 seasons, the expectation is that Clemson defensively will be at the top of the ACC and one of the top 5 or 10 best groups in the entire country, and that are the big shoes to fill that Wes Goodwin faces.
Yeah, I want to break down that defense a little bit more. As far as the D-line goes, you've got an experienced group of veterans, big-time talent there. And Dabo Swinney, he brought in Nick Eason, also former Clemson player who spent 17 years playing and coaching in the NFL as the defensive tackles coach there. So do you expect the D-line to be one of the best in the nation?
Without a doubt. Number 1 going into the season for me, 6 different players on this line have starting experience. And some of that's been because of the injuries that they have suffered. You know, Brian Brzee, Miles Murphy, Tyler Davis. These are players with all ACC experience. Xavier Thomas, former 5-star. And you can keep going down the line, and you can even see that in the backups, you've got former 4-stars, former 5-stars that are expecting to make an impact. And I think that that's going to allow this Clemson defense to take on some of of the same characteristics of some of those championship runs, which is they substituted a lot, they kept their players fresh, and it wasn't just keeping their players fresh within the context of a game, Jenny, it was keeping their players fresh in the context of a season. This Clemson football team expects to play 15 games this season. They expect to compete for a national championship. And so if you're going to make it through the grueling grind of a 15-game season, then you need to limit some of those snaps during the regular season. And the experience, the depth, and the talent that they have along the defensive line is going to allow them to do that. They're not even going to be able to really show their teeth, so to say, in every single game. But when it's time to do that in the toughest games on their schedule, I think that we are going to see that Clemson has the best defensive line in the country.
I want to turn our attention now to the offense. We have DJ Uiagalelei out there as the quarterback, but we're not sure how he's going to fare this season. So what kind of chance do we have if he fails, and not that I want anyone to fail, that we might see Cade Klubnik under center at some point?
I do think that we would see Cade Klubnik come in if DJU fails, but I think our starting position has to be that DJU has all of the support of Dabo Swinney. He has all of the support of this retooled offensive staff. And I think that Uiagalelei has sort of taken on the improvement on his own. He said at ACC Football Kickoff that he weighed himself after the Cheez-It Bowl, and he didn't like where he was at, and he went on to lose about 25 pounds. Some of his coaches have said that's going to help him with his balance, with some of his footwork, with him trying to maintain that platform when he's trying to make throws on the run. Now, listen, after a bowl of Cheez-Its, I also have been disappointed at the way I show up on the scales, but I think that DJU is going to be playing so much better than he did a year ago. The wide receiver room, I will say, also needs to take a step forward from where they played, but with 9 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, last in the ACC in passer rating, last in the ACC in yards per attempt. We saw this guy throw for 400 yards at Notre Dame as a true freshman. We know that his potential is higher than what he showed last season. Again, it is encouraging if you're a Clemson fan that he's taken some ownership, and I do think the blame is shared across the offense. He will play better, but if he can play elite, then Clemson could be in for a national title contending season.
Ooh, all right. Let's look at that schedule. The Tigers' schedule here. They open the season September 5th against Georgia Tech in Atlanta. What other games stick out to you here? Which ones do you have highlighted?
It's first the October 1st game against NC State. The Wolfpack took down the Tigers in Raleigh last season, and that game is absolutely huge for the ACC Atlantic Division race, as we've seen NC State consistently show up as a top 15, top 20 type team. But then it's at the end of the season, because in November, you've got, if I was to power rank them, 2 of the 3 toughest games on the entire schedule. Obviously, at Notre Dame is going to be one of the biggest games of the entire season. There will be college football playoff implications for both teams. And then that game against Miami, it's going to be in Death Valley. It might be the first of 2 games between Dabo Swinney and Mario Cristobal, as Miami is a popular pick to win the ACC Coastal. So what happens in that game? Do we see the Tigers play the Hurricanes again? The Notre Dame and the Miami game in November, and then in early October against NC State. Those are really the only 3 tests that I see for Clemson this year.
So not too many tests. So when you look at the over-under right now, it's at 10.5. Which way are you going?
Over. Easy. They might slip up once. I will say that, national championship winning Clemson teams have lost 1 game, as Clemson lost to Pitt in 2016, then went on to win the national championship. But 2 slip-ups, I just do not see that happening. This is going to be a team that, with its defense, just needs ACC average play from the quarterback position to be able to win the conference and probably finish with 10 or 11 wins. If DJU is even above average, then I think that 11-1 is easy. And again, if DJU is elite, then I could see the Tigers going 12-0, thanks to how really stocked and loaded this Clemson defense is going into the season.
All right, so going off of that, we're going to take a look at the futures market right now. They're the favorites to win the ACC at -140 now. They're at +150 to make the playoffs, +1,000 to win it all. So what are your thoughts there?
I would not go with +1,000 to win it all. I love the ACC, and to make the playoff, I do think is a great proposition, because those 2 games that I highlighted, the Notre Dame game and the Miami game, if one of those does end up being a loss, I think that having that schedule that has teams that are in the top 15 and top 20 is going to help their strength of schedule in such a way that you go into the ACC championship game, you defeat potentially a very good and highly ranked Miami team, you're still going to be able to make it into the playoff. I also look elsewhere, and I think that if you've got Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, everyone assumes that that is going to be a trio that's going to exist in the top 5 through the entire season. But if Alabama or Georgia slip up prior to the SEC championship game, we throw one of those SEC teams out. And I just think that Clemson, while it will be fighting with a Utah, while it will be fighting with a Notre Dame, while it will be fighting with potentially an Oklahoma or someone out of the Big 12 for that 4th spot, I think that the Tigers, based on their reputation, based on what they've accomplished in the college football playoff era, that will help the way the committee sees them, the way the committee ranks them when it comes to splitting hairs.
All good points there, Chip Patterson. Thanks for joining us here on CBS Sports HQ. If you want more from Chip, you got to tune into the Cover 3 College Football Podcast. It's a perfect call for any diehard fans. The latest pod, the Cover 3 crew, answering questions asked by the fans out there. And they're also talking to former Texas A&M standout in Travion Williams. Tune in and listen up today.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.